So what I started through the Fulbright project was called, it is called the Lollipop's Crown Arts Initiative. It's an initiative that seeks to empower youth through the power of art. One of the greatest threats we face today, and I'm speaking as a Muslim American, is the huge trust deficit that exists between the Muslim world and the West. But as well, there is a trust deficit within Muslim communities abroad between a youth who feel extremely alienated and the state. The work of Lollipop's Crown believes in the power of people-to-people interaction, and it seeks to train youth in exercises of pluralism, cooperation, and youth empowerment. And essentially it seeks to combat the trust deficit that exists between Muslim societies and the West. Again, I'm speaking as a Muslim American, but the Western colonialism of the past has transformed today into a self-colonization by Muslim despots and extremists of the Muslim majority's space for debate, spiritual, political, and artistic freedom. Thus, many communities are left underdeveloped, illiterate, and economically depressed because our communities are all affected by the same affliction. We cannot question, we cannot challenge, we cannot explore without fear of judgment. So it is in this context that I designed the Lollipop's Crown Arts Initiative. What you're seeing now are some video from the project in Kashmir that I just did. I don't have outside funding. I don't have any money. I just have very generous parents that let me go do these kinds of things. But essentially the kids were taught how to play music, how to write music notation, rhythm notation. So essentially they're composing their own rhythm notation, learning how to play. And in this exercise, they're learning to express their anger through music. And this is boys and girls, by the way. And the essential thing is each of them was composing their own rhythm, writing it down, and then the boys and girls would together play one another's rhythms and listen and play and collaborate. One of the main lessons in this project that I've been doing, and this was done in Morocco as well, is that make mistakes. Make mistakes. There's a lot of fear in some Muslim communities that you can't make mistakes, you can't be too critical, and if you don't have that, how are you supposed to evolve? How are you supposed to push forward? How are you supposed to even develop your own spirituality if you can't make mistakes? So once they got over that, they got over that through these music workshops. The second phase was learning how to write, direct, and act and film their own short stories. And these short stories were based on issues about the future. That's the only kind of direction I gave them. Was like, I want your films to be about the future. Think about the future. Think about things that you would want to improve and make better in your community. And what's incredible about that is what were the topics that they chose to do. These are 10-year-old orphans in Kashmir. This is in addition to the work in Morocco. Pollution, cleaning up the environment and restoring Kashmir to her glory, female education, and this is boys and girls thinking to make these films, right? This one really was my favorite one, not this one, but this one I'm about to tell you. They made a film about the importance of religious tolerance in politics. 10 years old, in Kashmir, in an embattled war zone. That's what they did. And the fourth one was about corruption in the education system. So that was the first part of kind of the Lollipops and Crowns Music and Arts Initiative. The next phase was actually the music concerts. So essentially my brother and I organized rock and roll concerts in Kashmir, and we did the same in Morocco as well. The U.S. Embassy sponsored us to do a music tour throughout all of Morocco. And it was there that we got to work with the artists and really collaborate with the artists. I'll just talk about Kashmir very briefly. In over 20 years of coming to this extraordinary place, one term was told to me that sums it all up. Kashmir is controlled chaos. It is within this context that we tried to put on rock and roll concerts and cultural exchange programs. We did the same in Morocco. Before playing our first concert, just hours before playing our first concert, a group of young Kashmiri kids snuck into our rehearsal room, and they were terrified to talk to us, but we ended up having a conversation. And they just came up to us and said, "We're so glad that you're doing this. We want the world to see us as human beings, and we're artists, and we're students, and we're not terrorists. And we're like, we know. And then they proceeded to tell us about the kind of rock and roll that they were listening to. And I'll tell you, at that concert, there was people in Iron Maiden T-shirts, Nirvana T-shirts. To get those concerts off the ground was extremely difficult. But once we played that first concert, that was the spark. And we couldn't walk down the street without being pulled into playing wedding tents and universities. My favorite part of that whole experience, though, was the process of rehearsing music with local folk Kashmiri artists. So essentially, us as a rock and roll band from America, as American Muslims, we were sitting in a studio with folk musicians, some of them were very old, who already didn't like us at all because we looked awful and they looked, much nicer than we did. They were wearing kurtas and everything like that, and they just didn't know what to make of us. We listened to them, and then they'd listen to our rock and roll, and it was kind of awkward. But then the process of actually trying to collaborate was when all that insecurity and all that mistrust was transcended by the process of mutual collaboration through the arts. And we ended up performing folk music with a rock and roll band and a rock and roll band with folk musicians to the public. And it was incredible. And this is at a time, by the way, when over 100 protesters, a year before, over 100 protesters were killed over the summer, and there was a crackdown. So literally there was nothing going on a year before. So the community was they were waiting for it. They're waiting for it, and in a lot of Muslim countries. The more we saw, though, that we realized what challenges that these artists face, and it's not just in Kashmir, it's in a lot of Muslim communities. A music director told me, there's no free expression. We've had to succumb to pressure from all sides, not just one. It's the same story, he told me, whether you're a journalist, a poet, a dancer, or a musician, or an activist, end quote. Whatever concerts were taking place in the valley were being exploited by the state and the government as signs of normalcy. Then there were the Islamic fundamentalists who were saying that this was all haram. They said that these kinds of initiatives distracted the youth from remembering the lost lives of last summer and the political changes that need resolution and their religious obligations. The people's ability at free expression is thus suffocated by both the state and the religious leadership. This is endemic within many Muslim communities today, and Rock the Casbah actually speaks to some of these issues. Either you're too political and religious or not political and religious enough. That's essentially the both sides of the problem that artists are dealing with in many Muslim communities. Be it in my interviews with human rights activists, journalists, or musicians, I soon realized the degree to which this conflict and all of its players have colonized the space for freedom of speech and expression in both the arts and in civil society. This spiritual, intellectual, and artistic space must be engendered and promoted in our own living rooms and dinner tables and masjids and classrooms. Fathers and mothers must openly communicate with our children in allowing a space for questioning their faith, developing their spirituality organically through creative expression. This is essential, in my opinion. Principally, there must be more promotion in our education apparatuses in Asia and the Middle East, consisting of the arts and humanities, fostering pluralism, and the promotion of religious tolerance. As our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, quote, "If anyone travels on a road in search of knowledge, Allah will cause him to travel on one of the roads of paradise." Art is one lane on that road. It is in the convergence of the counter-jihads of all people, be they Muslim or non-Muslim, that we will find the jumping-off point for millions of hopes. Thank you very much.